Hello and welcome to all our online viewers, stream.aljazeera.com. That's where you are and that's where you're watching us. It's the pre-show just before we begin a packed program. We're going to be talking Equatorial Guinea, we're going to be talking Iceland and much, much more. Ahmed and Zed have just been discussing the semantics of what is anti-Semitic and what is not, what is offensive and what is not, and that's because Apple have taken down, Ahmed, the Third Intifada app. Tell us about that.
Yes, that's true. So there was lots of talk about this, and then you wrote an article about it today. But apparently, the Apple Apple has removed the Intifada app from the store on the grounds that it is offensive to a large group of people. So go ahead, maybe you want to talk about it since you wrote about it. I'll pull it up right here on my screen.
Sure. So basically, for a few weeks now, Apple has been under pressure from a lot of people. Some of them were activists like the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Others were the Israeli government themselves. They've been making requests to basically take down this app that's calling for a third intifada, which is Arabic for uprising against the Israelis. And Ahmed actually has the app pulled up right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to talk people through it. I mean, right here, this is like their news section, right? So this is a series. This is a series of news articles, and then if you click here, this is more news, but I guess feature news articles, and then has a series of different features. I'm just going to go back right here. See, this is, you could play songs that are presumably patriotic. There's also a series of videos that you can scroll through. Rather than playing it, I'll just show you, of course, there's Hebrew comments. There's a commenting system built in where people can comment in Hebrew and Arabic, really in any language. Since we haven't checked these comments, I'm not going to get into them.
Yeah, Zed, this sets a dangerous precedent, doesn't it?
No, exactly. I mean, if you can't basically be engaged in speech that Apple disapproves of or deems offensive, then what can you be engaged in? And this is really interesting. I actually found this, and I pulled this up right here. On iTunes, you can actually go and find an app by the Israeli government called the Israel MFA app, and basically it's the mirror image of the Palestinian app. It has propaganda against the Palestinians, talking about Palestinian incitement, talking about the Israeli humanitarian, quote-unquote, humanitarian lifeline to Gaza. So basically, Apple's following a double standard here, saying that it will...
But then theoretically, I mean, Ahmed, what's to stop Palestinian activists from approaching Apple and saying this is offensive, and for them to get that taken down?
No, you have a good point. I mean, obviously, Israelis in this country, through the Jewish lobby and just through the recent history, are more influential, so to speak, are in positions, more so than I would assume Arabs or Palestinian activists in terms of Apple responding to them. But that's it's a valid point because, frankly, in this New York Times article, it says that the Simon, I'm going to just highlight this part right here, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, a group dedicated to stopping anti-Semitism, put out a statement on Tuesday asking them to immediately withdraw its approval of the application, and it was on the grounds that it contains anti-Israel content. Well, right here we have the app, I don't know if you can see this, but the app that he's talking about, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Israel, which has a lot of videos where they, you could argue that it's offensive to the Palestinian plight, but also to political groups, and so the question is, there's millions of Muslims who might be offended by this app, or millions of Palestinian sympathizers, So the question is, how do you really corroborate this? How do you judge what a lot of people is?
Right, and I also think there's just millions of advocates for free speech. People who want a free debate in this country about issues like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I just don't think it's fair to be allowing, Israeli government subsidized propaganda onto the iTunes store, and not to allow, grassroots Palestinian activists to have their say as well.
Yeah.
Have we ever heard of an app being taken down before this?
Yeah, presumably there have been apps that are taken down. I mean, Apple's store policy under Section 19 says, and I'll quote right here if you can pull up the screen, says, apps containing references or commentary about a religious, cultural, or ethnic group that are defamatory, offensive, mean-spirited, or likely to expose the targeted group to harm or violence will be rejected. So, I mean, the question is, again, it's the same thing. I don't know if this is the first app that has been pulled down on these kind of grounds. But there's definitely been a precedent. Even the paragraph below it, we know that Facebook removed a group from the Third Intifada group as well. And then the other groups came up, and then they removed them as well. So it's been a back and forth.
Well, this is interesting. I actually, during the healthcare debate in this country a couple years ago, and I pulled this up, Wired.com notes that an app advocating for single-payer healthcare, basically Canadian-style healthcare, was rejected because it was politically charged. So what's going on here? Was Apple picking and choosing, progressive causes to reject and allowing things like the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
There's also a financial incentive, so to speak. Did you mention that about
Right, exactly. If you go to iTunes
Right.
and you can basically you can buy any movie, you can buy any audio
With any
book,
sort
you
of content that's inflammatory or
Right,
political.
exactly. And the difference is that these apps are free,
right.
basically for activists, whereas these are, these other things are basically what Apple's making money off of. So, what we're asking is, is Apple basically in here to make a buck, or are they in here for a principle too? And I think a lot of their consumers really would want them standing up for free speech much harder.
Well, what's interesting is that you mentioned, Ahmed, both Facebook and Apple, and it brings me to the thought that there's this assumption that a lot of this technology is non-ideological, completely by default objective.
Right.
And then there's a lot of sanctimonious moralizing in the direction of China, for example, when it starts blocking things and says you can't say this or that on our servers. To a lesser extent, this is happening here, and the proof of the pudding is in the eating here with this third Intifada app.
No, you're totally right, and from my perspective, the thing that frustrates me most about this, or that maybe evokes some curiosity, is the question that these tools, Google, Facebook, and Twitter, have been hailed for bringing a sense of civic engagement online to a part of the world, the Arab world, where it hasn't really been tolerated. So you can include nonviolent protest or the Intifada in that. So you see them being championed for this, and then at the same time they're arbitrarily, and I use the word arbitrarily because their policy is not clear. It's inconsistent. Right. Why are they choosing to take down these pages and not others? Just quickly, sorry, we have a tweet from Iron Chariots on this issue saying, Apple arbitrarily blocking apps they dislike is nothing new, to answer, I think, your question, and is fact their modus operandi. So,
yeah, Zed, if you were, very quickly, if you were from the Chinese government and you saw this, you'd say, you guys are calling us out all the time, look at yourselves.
Well, no, exactly, and I think that's exactly the issue. In the United States, we have very, very strong free speech laws. What we don't have right now is corporations respecting free speech. Right. So we all have to be vigilant, and the best way to send these corporations a message is to not frequent them when they do things like this.
Okay, Ahmed's getting a cup of coffee. Zed's.
Do you want one?
No, thanks. I'm okay.
Great.
I've just had mine. My mouth is dry now. Get ready for the main event, the main show on Al Jazeera English. We'll be starting in about 30 seconds' time. We'll see you on the other side of this. Hello and welcome. I'm Imran Gupta, filling in for Derek Ashong, and you're in The Stream, a social media community with its very own TV show. We're bringing you the stories that are ongoing, global, and sourced from social media. Today, Equatorial Guinea is blessed with natural wealth, but has one of the worst human rights records in the world. So why isn't anyone talking about it? And Iceland looks to crowdsource its new constitution. Is this the next step in democracy or mob rule? Well, as always, our digital producer Ahmed Shihabuddin is here tracking all of your feedback, and joining us on the couch next to him for a second day is Zed Jilani, who's a reporter blogger for thinkprogress.org. Zed, any stories that have been grabbing your attention today?
Sure. So I've actually pulled up right here a story by my colleague Ali Gharib, talking about the State Department. We actually mentioned the flotilla yesterday, and then one country that's been very, very silent on the flotilla has been the United States. But actually, what my colleague Ali noted is that the State Department actually put out a special warning yesterday talking about what would actually may happen to Americans who travel over there. And they actually said that that traveling to break the blockade may result in injury, death, arrest, and deportation of U.S. citizens, which is really fascinating because as of yet, they haven't done anything about the American citizen who was killed in the flotilla disaster last year.
Yeah, of course, a dual Turkish-American citizen, and many believe that the United States, in a way, hid behind the fact that he was also a Turk and said, okay, he was Turkish.
No, absolutely, and I think it's just remarkable that our government, as of yet, hasn't really stood up for our own citizens versus a foreign country, Israel. And I'm glad that Ali wrote this story and let people know that the State Department needs to get its eye on the ball here.
Okay, Zed, look forward to your thoughts during the rest of the show. Well, let us know what stories you're following. You can share them by tweeting us at AJ Stream.
Hello, my name is Layla Saleh and I use social media to help bring awareness to the Palestinian cause, and I'm in the stream.
Now, Equatorial Guinea has the highest GDP in all of Africa, largely due to the discovery of oil. But despite its wealth, some 70% of Equatorial Guineans live in poverty, and child mortality remains relatively high. In fact, one report says it's the highest in the world. Critics blame the country's longtime ruler, President Theodore Obiang Nguema, who seized power from his uncle in 1979. Human rights groups accuse the Obiang government of massive corruption, torture, and denying press freedom. Despite all of this, much of the world's media has ignored the situation there. But one small group of activists known as the Colectivo is trying to change all of that. Let's have a look at their webpage. They don't have too much up on the internet, but this is one of their web pages. It's in Spanish, so apologies if you don't speak Spanish. You won't know what it says. However, you could go there, theoretically, and do a semi-decent job with Google Translate. That's the page, Colectivo de Jóvenes de Guinea Equatorial. Apologies for the pronunciation over there. They've also got a song endorsing the movement by Nakeli Pana, and just generally talking about the situation of the youth and those who are disillusioned in this country of massive economic disparities. Let's play some of it from YouTube. So we're seeing a montage of pictures from Equatorial Guinea. Fascinating symbol there, the drum with the shell symbol of the oil company, and many of the lyrics trying to highlight the fact that all this immense wealth that has come from oil and gas. In fact, one U.S. official called Equatorial Guinea the new Kuwait. All of that oil and gas and other minerals not filtering down to the everyday people in the country, and it's leading to a lot of frustration because there's a small elite holding on to a lot of cash and a lot of wealth. There's also the latest report from Amnesty International, which has spoken about recent arrests that have been taking place. Let's just take you to the top line there. Equatorial Guinea surge in arbitrary arrests ahead of AU summit. Equatorial Guinea, the revolving head of the AU at this moment in time, and it says the authorities in Equatorial Guinea must immediately end a draconian clampdown on freedom of expression taking place ahead of the AU summit in the capital, Malabo, on the 23rd of June. And that's from Amnesty International. You can go to Amnesty's website for the full report, and it does paint a fairly sordid picture about the current situation for those who want to dissent and want to have their voices heard. But the President Obiang has been speaking in encouraging terms about the challenges ahead, and of course what he feels have been the major developments in the country and the fact that he's getting it on its own 2 feet. Let's listen to some of what he had to say in 2010. There we go.
Hemos superado el programa de la reconstrucción del país. Estamos ahora en la fase de construcción. Francamente, todo el mundo asegura de que Guinea Ecuatorial se ha transformado. Y esa transformación se ve en los aspectos infraestructural, en los aspectos moral del pueblo, porque realmente el pueblo se siente sano. Por eso yo creo que es un cambio importante desde el punto de vista político-económico del país, y por lo tanto todo el mundo lo certifica.
So there's a transformation, everybody can attest to it, everybody's feeling satisfied. I'm presuming our first guest is not entirely satisfied with the situation in Equatorial Guinea and, of course, what the President had to say. Let's speak to Tutu Alicante, the Executive Director of EG Justice, which is an advocacy group working for the rights of Equatorial Guineans. Welcome to the stream, Tutu. Great pleasure having you on the program. Tell us, first of all, your response to the President. You heard that clip that I just played there. He says things are more or less okay in the country.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me in the program. One thing that the president doesn't talk about in that clip is that 75% of the people in Equatorial Guinea today still do not have access to clean water or running water. 75% of the people in Equatorial Guinea today still live on less than $1 a day. And that, so when he talks about everybody being satisfied and everybody being able to attest to the developments in the country, I am not sure what percentage of people he's talking about, because again, if you look at the statistics from IMF, World Bank, UNDP, 2/3 of Equatorians still lack basic amenities.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Those statistics are a scathing indictment of his policies and the inequalities in the country. Now, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the Colectivo, this movement that is trying to fight back, and tell our viewers why it's been so difficult for so many journalists, including ourselves, to get hold of them and to actually get them to appear on camera to talk to us, to tell us about their gripes with the government.
Well, Imra, one thing you should know is that following the events in Tahrir Square and everything that happened in Tunisia, Libya, and other places in North Africa, President Obiang, who is currently chairing the African Union, and in fact, this week, the African Union is meeting in Equatorial Guinea, President Obiang went on national TV to say that national radio, national TV should not publish any news, should not broadcast any news having to do with the events in North Africa. Right? And we know also that journalists inside the country that subsequently feature any footage of what was happening in North Africa have been heavily reprimanded. We also know that last week, a group of a TV crew from Germany who was in Equatorial Guinea filming had all the footage confiscated. Right? And as you mentioned, journalists from abroad, Al Jazeera and others, have not been given visas, or when they're inside the country, they've been followed and harassed. Right?
Now, Tutu, if I could ask, do you and your group, do you view the AU summit as a positive thing because it'll bring the media to your country and sort of allow them to display the situation, or do you actually view it as a negative thing because it may give legitimacy to a government that may not deserve it?
Yeah, unfortunately, it gives legitimacy to the government that doesn't deserve it, right? And a year ago, we had a similar battle with UNESCO when UNESCO almost accepted money from the government of Equatorial Guinea to create an award named after him, $3 million. And this is a country, again, in which kids go to school. Kids have to walk miles and miles to go to school, do not have running water before they go to school. Most of them do not have anything to eat before they go to school. And UNESCO was about to accept this money. And we precisely made that point that this money is going to legitimize a government that doesn't deserve it. And it's the same situation here. We're looking at the same situation.
Tutu, I just want to say about that UNESCO story you're talking about in 2010 in October. We covered this story, so for our viewers, we can tweet out this link for people who want to find out more. But on Twitter, we're getting a comment from Gutmang saying, Equatorial Guineans live in squalor while Obiang lives like Jay-Z. He's saying Africa needs uprisings. Nigeria, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Gambia, and the list goes on. Now, I just want to highlight something you were talking about earlier. It seems that he's spent over $830 million to build Sipopo, which is this right here on my screen, this little area where the summit is actually being held. And that's a fourth of how much he's spending on the actual education system in the country. So one other tweet that came in is Kagwata saying, well, what about the African Nations Cup that's going to be held in Equatorial Guinea next year? What do you make of that? Is there going to be an uproar?
We hope so. The international community, these are precisely the moments in which people, you have to know that Equatorial Guinea is a country of 500,000 people, a small country. And we desperately need voices from outside. We desperately need voices like the voices we're hearing today from Al Jazeera, really raising the standards here, putting more pressure on the U.S. government and on other governments to ensure that governments like the one in Equatorial Guinea that does not respect human rights, that does not care about democracy, that does not invest in its people, are held to account.
Tutu, one of the events that announced Equatorial Guinea to the Western world was that 2004 coup attempt, and of course those mass arrests that happened, and the involvement of, the alleged involvement of Margaret Thatcher's son, Mark Thatcher. Do you think that if that 2004 coup had actually materialized, would Equatorial Guinea be better or worse off now?
Well, as a human rights lawyer, I can never advocate for violence, right? And what we need in Equatorial Guinea is actually to build institutions that can guarantee democracy for the long run. With ACU, I'm not sure that the institutions were in place to guarantee long-lasting democracy, which is what we need. So, unfortunately, I cannot say that ACU would have been a positive in the long run.
And do you fear, are you afraid that with all of these scathing statistics that you are mentioning to us now about the inequality, the child mortality rates among the worst in the world, are you afraid that your country is becoming one of those stereotypical, quote-unquote, banana republics that people talk about, where your natural resources become a curse and not a blessing?
Well, unfortunately, it has occurred already. Unfortunately, we are already there. Look, in the last couple of days, I've been in several interviews in which the Equatorial ambassadors in the UK and even the president has said this: there is no poverty in Equatorial Guinea. There are no human rights violations in Equatorial Guinea. This is how they see it. And what that means, is basically they don't think they have any work to do in terms of reforming human rights, democracy, transparency. So unfortunately, and that is what there is to be admired with this group of collectivos, right? These young people who have been born in a dictatorship, but as a result of what's happening in North Africa have been inspired to start something that by all means, is something that no one else would have dared do in Equatorial Guinea. And again, with the music that you play for Narkeli Pana and other young people that today are using rap or hip hop to express their feeling, we're beginning to see a resurgence, young people, they're willing to speak up, they're willing to challenge the system. And that, so I'm definitely hopeful for the future of Equatorial Guinea, but not because of the leaders that we have in place today.
Articulately put. Tutu Alicante, thank you very much for joining us on the stream.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, you can follow this story on our website, stream.aljazeera.com. There you'll find much more videos and links to the Colectivo blog. Here it is, a new voice from Equatorial Guinea on our main page, stream.aljazeera.com. Right, Ahmed's ready to give us some feedback from our contributors and all our followers. I understand we've got some news from Morocco.
Yes. Today we got a story shared with us about Morocco's King Mohammed, who gave a speech a couple days ago and who has also promised constitutional reforms and a referendum vote on July 1st. So we have 10 days before that vote. As you can see, here's the king, but these are some protesters or royalists that have come out in big numbers to actually support the king since the speech. This is the actual night of the speech. And we received a video from Warda Sahra, which shows these royalists allegedly or actually cornering and threatening a prominent human rights activist. So I'm just going to play the video. This right here is Khadija, as you can see the woman there, and the police is protecting her. Now, this is allegedly in Casablanca, I believe. But we want to just highlight the fact that Warda Sahra, shared this video with us and then afterwards said that she thinks it's really sad that the king gives a 55% literate population only 10 days to vote on a constitution that has tons of legal jargon in it. So the question is that fair?
Well, no, I don't think it is at all. I think we're actually seeing a repeat of what we saw in countries like Iraq and Egypt, where actually the elites, the military, the sort of established order put together a vote very, very quickly and didn't allow the population to really have a chance to go at it and really understand it before they voted on it.
So we'll be following the story just to see what happens. And of course, if you want to talk to us, we want to hear from you. So share your stories with us at AJ Stream, or you could always create an I'm in the Stream video, which we've been playing, and we'll include it in the show. So here's Ben to tell you how to do that.
Hi, I'm Ben Connors, and I work for the Stream. One of my jobs is to make these little I'm in the Stream videos, but I need your help. Whoever you are, wherever you are, we want you to send us a video. Tell us your name, something interesting, and then say, I'm in the stream. Keep it short, upload the video to YouTube, then tweet us the link at AJ Stream, and you can wind up here on Al Jazeera.
He couldn't have asked in a nicer way, Al Jazeera's very own Ben Connors. Now, after the collapse of its banking system in 2008, Iceland decided it needed a new constitution. Now, normally, important documents like this are drawn up by politicians and so-called experts. But Iceland is taking a very different approach, crowdsourcing, which means it's basically going with the wisdom of the crowd. and soliciting input from all parts of the country. Let's have a look at this Facebook page, which gives people a fair idea as to what they're doing. This is their Facebook page, and interestingly enough, they've given us a bit of a promo for the show. There you go. Tonight at 7:45 Icelandic time, GMT +1, Al Jazeera will broadcast an interview with one member of the Constitutional Council and discuss the task of the Council. And they give a link, and it also speaks about the entire movement to amend the Constitution. So far, 3,613 likes. Well, they are a very small country anyway. They've also got a Flickr page as well, where they upload photographs from their meetings. Apparently, they live stream all their meetings as well. So it's all looking very busy and happy and democratic over there. So plenty of photographs if you visit Flickr. And it would help if you understood Icelandic to read some of the captions, but you get a taste of it even if you don't. Well, with us now via Skype from Reykjavik is Katrín Oddsdóttir. I hope I've said your name correctly, a member of Iceland's Constitutional Council. Great to have you in the stream. Katrín, tell us how you got elected.
Okay, well, are you talking about the council in general or me personally? Just the council?
To the council, yeah.
Good. Okay, well, it started out years ago. We have always known that we have to revise our constitution. It's basically very old, and the most of it's just from when we got independent in 1944. Then we replaced the word king with president and said, okay, fine, it'll do. We need our independence, and then we always wanted to review it, but we never found the right opportunity. Now, after Iceland has crashed, like you probably know, we are finally doing it, and it's a great opportunity to be doing it at such a crossroads in our times. So we started out by doing a real crowdsourcing moment where we randomly selected 1,000 people, just any people from Iceland, from the age of 18 to 100 years old, and they all had to come together in a large gym house and just think about what sort of a community or what sort of society they wanted Iceland to become. So they all came together in November last year, and they had a massive brainstorm, and they figured out what sort of a nation we should try to become. And then a bunch of specialists tried to write some sort of report on how we could change our constitution so it could meet those expectations of the people. And finally, 25 people were elected for a Constitution Council, which are the ones that are there now. But we had a little bit of a breakdown when our Supreme Court said that the elections weren't valid, but after that we somehow managed to get back on track. And here we are writing a new constitution, and it's great.
Well, with all of this crowdsourcing, undoubtedly people are calling for many things. Critics might say utopian things, like more and more social benefits for Icelandic citizens. It's going to cost more money. After that banking system crash of 2008 and the general financial depression of 2008 and beyond, how are you going to pay for this?
Well, if anybody can really have a human rights democratic society, despite economic downfall, that would be Iceland. You know, we have a very, very, very rich country regarding natural resources, and there's only 320,000 of us. The population is highly educated. We don't suffer from, many problems that other countries have. And despite the fact that we had this amazing crash here, we are still in a good position to uphold the greatest human rights standards available, and that's a decision as well. I mean, everything is a matter of priority, and if your priority is to have a really good social welfare system, of course you can do that, It might cost a decision making such as never having an army, but I think that's a great decision to make. So I think that we are not in a stage where we have to choose between having a welfare society and something else. We are luckily still in a very good position, and we want to become like the sort of a nation we had promised ourselves to be. We got a little bit greedy and we got a little bit lost, and we went off track.
And
now, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So, Christine, I'm actually a huge fan of this. I'm a huge fan of direct democracy, and I really love that you're doing this experiment. But there's critics like Josh Keating at foreignpolicy.com who's saying, well, maybe this was a model that may have worked in the Viking days, saying that the country is too big now, the administrative tasks are too difficult for crowdsourcing. How do you defend direct democracy and defend yourself from critics like that and say that this actually can work even in modern society to have such a direct sort of democratic system as crowdsourcing your constitution?
Okay, well, I think his critic is fair. I mean, I don't think that in the most strict sense we're doing it by crowdsourcing, because we're not putting the text online and writing it all together. What we're doing is the 25 people are writing the text together, putting all the suggestions online as we go, and there people can comment, those who want. You know? So what is happening is that there's a selective audience, if you like. Those who are interested are participating. Those who are not interested are not.
Katrine, I want to throw you to Ahmed, because Ahmed's got some really good feedback from Twitter and our many viewers. Ahmed, give us a taste of some of that feedback.
Yeah, a lot of people find this idea intriguing, to say the least, whether they agree with it or not. Hus Fahmi is saying, crowdsourcing Iceland's constitution is the kind of idea that will make it the first created state in the information age. Now, Son of Philosophy says ideas from the public should always be welcome, but much thought and effort ought to be required to make them politically viable. Now, crowdsourcing we've seen in these nascent, governments in Egypt and in the Arab world have played a central role in eliminating bureaucracy and bringing about real change and security and stability. So there's one argument, but what do you think of this? I mean, do you take this point that you need to be careful to make it politically viable?
No, I think that what has been proven in Iceland is the fact that people are incredibly good at participating, and everything becomes much better with their participation. I was expecting this to be much harder, but the decision that or the sort of realization we've come to is that you can totally trust people for things like that, and this is not too complicated for the public to be involved in it. We're getting so good ideas from the public, and we're using them, and it's great. We're only 25, we have limited time, but with their help, we can make it,
Katrina, I have a final question for you. I know you're going to stay with us for the post-show, so we can continue this discussion online, but a final question for you on the TV show. This is all still going to be taking place in an advisory role towards the Parliament. I mean, Parliament has to make the final decision at the end of the day. They could, theoretically, ignore all your recommendations, can't they?
They could, yes, but they would be in serious trouble if the nation, the power of ideas is such that if you have a really good idea, it will conquer, and if our ideas are good enough, they will conquer. I'm sorry, that's just a fact. And I don't care about the formal path they will have to pass. They will still end up being used if they're good enough.
Katrine, fantastic hearing your thoughts. Ahmed, give us one or two more tweets before we go.
The last one from Iron Chariots, to sum up, he's a supporter of crowdsourcing, is saying, it becomes more viable with larger crowds. So each new node in a network adds more connections than the one before, and it's certainly successful in the virtual realm, so we'll see if in government it's
maybe it
successful
can grow
as well.
exponentially. Maybe this can be a model for the rest of the world, or maybe we're all just dreaming of some sort of liberal utopia. We'll never know. Katrine, thanks a lot for that. Zed, Ahmed, great pleasure having all of you, and thank you for joining us in the stream. You can stay with us online, stream.aljazeera.com, to continue the conversation. If you're watching on TV, see you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for staying with us on the post-show. Stream.aljazeera.com is where you're at, and we're just getting into the thick of things with this conversation about direct democracy or not in Iceland, and crowdsourcing being used as a tool to rewrite the constitution. Let's go back now to Katrine. Katrine, why don't you address this idea as to whether this is something purely achievable within the Icelandic context, or it could possibly, hopefully, be used as some sort of model for other parts of the world. What do you think?
Well, of course, that's what we hope. I mean, in the beginning, we were not thinking about that at all. But since that, the foreign media has caught interest in this, we've been thinking, why not? I mean, it works amazingly well. That's a thing I can assure you of. But again, we are 320,000, so maybe it's easier to manage. But I think that the wisdom of the crowd is so important when it comes to creating a fundamental strategy that you shouldn't actually sacrifice it, even if it takes a little bit more time and if it's a little bit more complicated. You're going to get much better end results. So I think in the end of the day, it will always be worth it, And what's amazing, and I want to say, is that you don't get the bullshit, that you normally get online through this canal, at least not in our experience. We were a little bit afraid when we started putting everything out in the open that people would just start, slagging us and be all angry and maybe rude and stuff. That hasn't happened at all. I think it's because the subject is very, it needs a certain amount of care. This is our constitution, our social contract, so we can't be, behaving like idiots. We have to take it a little bit seriously. But the ideas we're getting are great.
One thing, I just want to share this with you. It's a kind of anecdotal story, so feel free, Imran, to cut me off if I ramble too much. But one of the founders of Storify, so this tool that we use to aggregate photos and videos and tweets, I was talking to him a couple months ago, and I know he's probably doing backflips now, so excited at the news that Iceland's doing this. Why? Because this actual tweet that we read, Iron Chariot's talking about nodes and networks and connections. I mean, he made an argument that this is the way to the future for the sole purpose that oftentimes in government you have people who are not experts in certain areas who, as a result of the system of government and the electoral system, especially in this country, are making decisions that, perhaps they're not really qualified to make. They don't have an expertise. So through crowdsourcing, it takes the system of nodes, where in the internet you have people who are influencers. We have this thing called clout, which, highlights who on Twitter is influential on certain issues. So to mirror that in government, theoretically makes sense. Now, whether the application is successful or not, it'll be interesting to watch. But I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, let's get Katrine's final thoughts because we've got another guest lined up from Senegal that I really want to go to. Katrine, final thoughts from you.
Okay, well, it's interesting what your colleague was saying because definitely that's what we have faced in Iceland. We have had, when the crash happened, our finance minister was a vet. Maybe that explains to you what happens when you have a very small society, and people push each other because they like each other politically, But what we have gotten now is for example, we're trying to put in the freedom of the information because we know that's the next big thing, into our constitution. So what we do is we outsource it to the computer nerds. We say, guys, how can we do it the best way? And they open Etherpad and they get out the best, parts of the discussion. We might not use it all, but at least they give us the lingo and they give us the possibilities of thought. So, we are outsourcing to special groups as well, knowing that they just know more about it than us, and that's exactly what your friend was talking about, it's a great ability to be able to give it to the people that have the best knowledge.
Katrine, we're all watching this new experiment very, very closely, and we hope you keep in touch as this unfolds. Katrine, thanks for joining us from Reykjavik.
Very much. Good luck.
Now, Ahmed, just before we get to Senegal,
right,
I just want you to give us another example of how positive crowdsourcing can be, not only looking towards the future, but how useful a tool it can be looking towards the past and answering some of the mysteries of the past.
Right. You're going to have to give me a second just to pull this up, but I have it actually right here. So this is a World War II mystery that has now been solved. On the blog of the New York Times, we see that basically there was this anonymous photo album from a Nazi photographer way back when, and the New York Times bought this and they put it up online because there were questions as to who the photographer was, who the people in the photo were, actually a series of photos, frankly. And the way that they were able to solve this question, this mystery of this photo that just turned up from I don't really know. I think it's actually, 214 photos, was just uploading it on their website, and within, I believe it was 4 hours, they were able to not only identify the photographer, but the people in the photo as well. So a powerful tool.
Yeah, Zed, we're learning new lessons with the wisdom of the crowd, not only for the future, but for the past as well.
No, exactly. And working as a blogger, I can tell you that's exactly what we do. When we have a story, 12 other blogs will chime in, we'll have enough information, and we'll get a new story out of that, and it's wonderful. That's how democracy works.
So sorry, forgive me, just so that we can clarify, the photographer in question was Franz Krieger, who was an Austrian who lived until 1993 and then eventually went on to be part of the Nazi Party. But then we just wanted to emphasize the woman in question was Frida Krieger, his wife. So they've both passed away since then, but still an interesting story nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm gonna dip into that and try and read some more on that. Utterly fascinating. Now, there's been some tumultuous times in Senegal. There was a proposed constitutional change by President Abdoulaye Wade. People rejected that and came out strongly against that. Let's speak to somebody in Senegal. Keve Banso, I understand, from Dhaka, joins us from Skype. And the president decided to rescind those changes because of the popular uproar, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, he just ended of the law because of the protest. Because since this morning there were protests all over in Senegal, especially in front of the National Assembly. So there were many tension. Many people are arrested and injured.
Is there a feeling that Abdoulaye Wade underestimated the strength of the opposition and the strength of feeling that people had in opposing these changes?
Yeah. He just ended off because of this, because of the protest, and also many even the ministers, even the how I call him, the member of the government. They say they don't vote this law. Yeah.
Ahmed, was there any internet traffic regarding this? Any videos that have come through?
Yeah, I'm actually playing a video. There have been several videos that we've been sharing, and frankly, early this morning, some photos that were sent to us from, I believe, netizens on the ground there, pretty much documenting some violent stuff. It's worth saying that we're going to be looking into this story and just more generally into this story next week, as it applies to not only Senegal but other countries in Africa.
To what extent, Keva, do you think that online sharing of videos and photographs from rallies, from protests, and what look like riots as well, to what extent does it influence the decision making in Senegal?
Yeah, the influence. The influence also, but it's a lot of because of the many youth were arrested also, and there were many tension. They do you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Keva.
Okay, yeah. And I think it's influence also because I hear that in the radio that the government, the American government, called the president also to tell him to end of this law.
Okay, Keva Banso, thank you very much for joining us via Skype from Dhaka. It's been good getting your insight and getting a sense of what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, thank you for Al Jazeera too, because it's important for us.
Okay, great. Great, Keva. We are losing the connection there, but Keva Banso talking to us there. Zed, one of the things that Ahmed mentioned that we are going to be covering next week, people seem to easily connect the threads when you have revolutions in quote-unquote Arab countries or majority Muslim countries. So, for example, with Tunisia, with Egypt, with Yemen, etc., people would call it the Arab Spring. Is there not an argument when you look at it? A lot of these countries are on the African continent, and of course, Ivory Coast decided that Gbagbo wasn't going to stick around despite the fact that he lost the election and said stubbornly that he was going to stay. You had South Sudan voting in that referendum for secession. You've got turmoil in places like Senegal and elsewhere. Is there not an argument, perhaps, to say that there's an African Spring taking place?
No, and a lot of my work deals with internet social activism and tracking that, and I think there's definitely an African Spring going on. But I take it even further. I would say there's a People's Spring going on.
Beyond continents, beyond boundaries.
Spain, Greece.
Exactly. Thailand, Wisconsin. Famously, the leader of many Egyptian unions put out a statement in support of the people of Wisconsin, saying that they were fighting for their rights as well. So I think this is happening all over the globe, and the internet is, of course, the best conduit for all of us to learn about it, and it's wonderful.
Speaking about learning about it, I just put in a quick search in Twitter, because the amazing thing about Twitter is you can get whatever you want, whatever news you want to learn more about. So I put in African Spring, and I got this tweet from Estes Gould. So this wasn't sent to us, but it says, Uganda could be close to an African Spring, using that term, but, quote, the potential for havoc in Uganda is arguably greater even than Egypt. So this is, I believe, just judging by this, an article in the Washington Post, and that's a direct quote.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear our contributor Roosevelt's
opinions. It's a shame. Maybe we'll Skype her in.
Yeah. Okay, let's leave it at that for the moment, gentlemen. That's it from me. Derek will be back in the seat from Monday. You've enjoyed enough of me, I think. Ahmed, it's been a pleasure working with you.
We've enjoyed it.
Picking your brain and just sharing this platform with you. Zed, thank you very much. It's been 2 fascinating and insightful SIGH, not CIT, days with you. Thanks a lot, gentlemen, and thank you to all of the members of the stream for making me feel so welcome. And thanks to you, the viewers, on stream.aljazeera.com. Keep watching. Bye-bye.